So
I like to start these sessions with a heartwarming story. So tonight's heartwarming story is not going to be the story of the security guard again. So weeks back, months back, I bought that music box thing, right, with the discs. And
Yeah, I remember it.
like a couple weeks ago, I get this eBay message tone on my phone. I'm like, oh God, who's unhappy with what purchased this week? What do I have to deal with? And no, it's the woman that sold me that music box. And she said, I found some more discs. I'm putting them in the mail for you. I'm like, really? Like
Wow.
anybody else would have just thrown them away. So I got 5 more songs
Holy shit.
for my song collection.
That's
Nice.
amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. There is good in the world.
does that go home, Bill Bailey? And what was the other one?
Okay, so we're gonna so we'll pull up PCB editor and get Betsy on track here.
Or at least less off the tracks.
So, like you said, I'm not sure exactly what your question is, but it sounds like you just need a quick pointer on edge cuts.
Yes.
And we'll deal with the copper fill in a minute. First, let me Control B and undo that. So, edge cut, you just choose the edge cuts layer. It's about a little bit more than halfway down on the right.
On the far right, all the way, midway down, you'll see a thing for the edge cuts, and that once you've activated that, you're able to then draw shapes on the edge cut layer.
Yeah, and what I usually do is just draw a rectangle to start. Bam. There's my board.
Is that how you got the art on there? That little pic present?
What?
That little present.
No, we did something different there.
Oh, okay.
First of all, that's not on the edge cuts layer. You were at that lesson, weren't you?
No.
You missed that one? Oh, that's the one you forgot we had a class.
Yeah.
So one thing to think about is, let's say, for instance, we were actually designing a badge. What you might want to have is a hole in your edge cut layer for a lanyard, right?
Right.
And so you can create another shape inside, like a circle, inside that, and
which actually comes into play with what we're thinking about for next year,
Yeah.
Now, so I hit the edge cuts layer on the right-hand side,
right?
And then I hit the rectangle and I go to draw it, and it just it doesn't leave a rectangle in there. It just
So single. Yeah. So what you're going to do is, so once you've clicked the rectangle shape, single click, release, drag your mouse, single click. Yeah.
Were you trying to drag a rectangle by holding it down?
I can tell exactly from the description that you were doing click drag, and no, that's a select operation.
Okay. And then if I wanted to make a little hole for the lanyard, I would do that, what I just did inside of the edge cut.
Yeah. And you can actually connect up. So you could actually do like an arc and a line and an arc and a line and create, an oval if you wanted to. You can do all sorts of shit.
I'm glad you said that, Braden, because I was thinking about that after last week's lesson, that we haven't talked about arcs at all, and they do come into play a lot.
And they're a paint, and
they're not intuitive to create. So
what's your question, Kevin?
I don't know what an edge cut is. I'm confused on what this is.
An edge cut is the edge of the board. So it's an actual cut through the PCB.
Okay, so if you, like in this example, you would literally cut this vertical line and there'd be a space in that PCB.
That's not a line, it's a long rectangle. And the point of that is to cut a hole, a slot.
Okay.
In the board.
So the PCB manufacturer will take the board and they'll put all sorts of boards together when they create it, kind of like the idea of like a wafer. You actually do a whole sheet and there's a wafer in it. So they'll do a whole bunch of PCBs on one big sheet. And then when they're done, they run it through a router and it will cut out the edge cut. And if you have a hole within the edge cut, it will also route that out too.
Okay. So that's how we got the screen in for the.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. That's how they did a hole in the middle of a PCB.
Got it.
And if you see anybody who's done, ones that have lanyards on them, like I did one that looked like a a standard ID card, right? And so that's got the oval slot at the top. And that was created using an arc, a line, an arc, and a line. And if you do that kind of thing where you build up a shape, you want to zoom way in, because when you put the cursor over, it will actually find the end of the other single element, and it will change the shape. It'll actually show you a little dot circle. Right? So now just leave that open, Bob. There you go. See, the very last thing he did, it showed a circle.
Yeah.
Right? So he can actually drag if he wanted to. Click and drag. And when it touches the end of the other one, it turns to a circle.
Right.
And that means that he knows that it has. Is it going to turn to a circle for you, Bob?
It's doing it. Yeah.
A little tiny circle right there. And that means that it knows that it's tried to close that up. Because one of the things with an edge cut is it has to be a closed shape.
Yeah, because if it looks like this, you won't see that from way off view.
Yeah.
But when you zoom way in, you'll see it, and DRC will see it. DRC will see it as an unconnected something.
Yeah. An unclosed edge cut.
Right.
So yeah, you can do all sorts of cool and crazy shapes.
Cool.
But for the purposes of tonight, the rectangle is good enough.
And you drew it outside of the main PCB. Is there any reason why, or just to demonstrate?
Because I already have an edge cut for the PCB. This was just to show the process of making one.
I got it. Where is your edge cut in the PCB? Just some.
The yellow border around the entire thing.
Got it.
And if you notice the faint red border around that, that's the defined copper pore area.
Okay.
We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, so if Bob zooms way in, you'll see that's just a yellow line, just like everything else we were just working on.
And that's going to be the actual board itself.
That's the cut line for the board that the PCB manufacturer will route to.
Got it.
And so that's why it's on its own layer, so that the PCB manufacturer can pick apart the layers and do different things with each layer. And so the edge cut layer is one that gets sent off to the router.
Right.
I could see where doing anything other than, I guess, a rectangle or circle could get super difficult.
Yeah, and there's techniques for doing it using other tools. So for instance, we tried to do it last week, but we ran into a little bit of a difficulty because we didn't have good files. If you want to do an irregular shape, the two most common tools for doing it is either Inkscape, which is a vector, does SVG files, or any CAD program that can create a DXF file.
Either one of those is a learning curve. Inkscape's actually worth the learning curve because you can use it for so much in this realm. Yeah.
And there are other, SVG vector software out there. I can't think of the one that Thea Flowers recommends and she uses all the time. It's a paid product, but it's not very expensive. And I guess if you don't, you're going to have a learning curve to whichever tool you use. But one of the advantages to Inkscape is a person has created a plugin for it that will let you explode your SVG onto layers that are compatible with KiCad.
Hey, I'm going to do something right now because Braden suggested it in the last 1 or 2 meetings. You see where I have my screen on here?
Yeah.
I'm going to do what Braden said and cut the screen area out with another edge cut. And the point of that is put the pins on backwards, facing up instead of down, and then you're mounting the screen face up from below. And I don't have the board around this whole area visible anymore. The board, the PCB base for the screen is now behind the board, and there's just a screen popping through.
Yeah, just that tiny little rectangle of a screen. The rest of the 1306 PCB doesn't show. And it looks kind of nice.
And since it's going to be in the same orientation, I don't have to worry about the wiring.
No, the wiring will be the same. You're just going to mount the pins on the top instead of the bottom.
Yeah.
And solder them through. So once you've got your edge cut defined, however simple or complex it's going to be, the next thing that Bob did was he created a fill, and that is over on the right-hand side, you'll see two shapes. One, if you hover over it, says add a filled zone. The one right below it, if you hover over it, says add a rule area. We won't do rule areas right now, but we want to create a fill zone. So we click that one. It's looks like a Tetris piece, and it's in cyan. And then you click somewhere on your screen outside of your edge cut. So anywhere outside your edge cut, it could be way outside or it could be somewhere close, but somewhere outside the edge cut, you'll want to do your first click. And then as soon as you release the mouse, it will say, well, what do you want this fill zone to be? And the most common thing you want it to be is a copper pour, and you want to define it as the ground. So you'd select front and back if you want to do a fill on both sides. You'd, the front copper and the back copper, and then you would specify what trace, and that would be the ground trace.
How come non-copper zones properties? Why did that come up?
I got to zoom in just a second. What was the question?
The box title is non-copper zones
because
properties.
you've already done your copper zones. You probably already have that defined.
So if
right?
I take that out and redo it,
yeah.
Okay, let me do that because I want the process to be visible for those who used it before.
Just new.
Okay. Okay, so right now it's just traces and components. There's no, and you see there's a few rat's nest pieces unconnected, and that's ground connections. And we deliberately left those off because we knew they would be covered by this. So I'm going to click the add a filled zone again. Click outside here. It still says non-copper zoned properties.
Yeah,
And I don't see the copper zones listed on here.
Mine is similar.
Yep, same here.
Okay, well, this is the classic. When in doubt, click cancel and escape. So let's just double check to see what we have. I think I know why the case is.
Okay.
Yep, I know why that is. What layer is currently active?
Edge cut.
Oh, so it wants me to select copper layer first?
You need to be on, if you're going to do a fill of a copper layer, you need to at least have a copper layer selected.
That makes perfect sense.
And
is there any reason not to do a copper fill on both sides?
There are cases where you don't want to do a copper fill on both sides. More importantly, when you get to 4-layer boards, you don't want to do copper fills on all 4 layers. But for the purposes of this, most often you will want copper on 2 layers because you're going to use it often to do your vias for your ground layer. So anyway,
that's what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah. So now you pick both front and back copper, and you pick what trace you want to play with. In this case, we want the ground.
Let's pause for a moment until we get Betsy's attention again.
Yeah, sorry. I sent Zach out to go get groceries, and he's putting them away for me. So, yeah. So you had to be on the fill copper layer.
Yeah, we picked a copper layer, and it could be either the front or the back, and that way at least the tool knows that you're dealing with a copper zone. Mm-hmm. So now I want you to choose, and what Braden was just saying is choose both layers, front and back, and we'll just go ahead and put a fill on both sides.
Yeah, make sure you select the ground as the trace you want to be using.
For a visual, Bob, on the badges we've done before, what does this represent? Is this the fine lines? What is?
No. So
honestly, I use it for ground, and I do more advanced stuff in the Tarot badge. Mm-hmm. But Tarot was the first one that I used a ground pour for ground. But I also created keep out zones where all the images were and where the light bleed through goes, because you don't want any copper there. And then I would add individual copper zones inside of that with a no net reference if I wanted something just to be shiny.
Mhm.
I want copper there just so that it's shiny, right?
Yeah.
For
So
artistic purposes.
yeah. So the primary reason for doing a copper fill is such that there's two reasons for it. One, so you have a ground plane for various RF and noise and signal noise and that kind of stuff. It also, as your board gets more and more complex, it becomes very handy because if your grounds aren't connecting up, you can just simply drop a via from front to back anywhere. And all of a sudden the copper on the front is tied to the copper on the back and it'll connect everything up magically for you.
And what some people do is they'll do one layer fill for ground and another layer fill for power, for positive.
Yeah.
And it just makes routing a little easier in complicated boards.
Yeah. And by the time you get to that, you tend to do 4-layer. Another reason aesthetically for doing a copper pour is if you're not using black or white mask. So if your board isn't black or isn't white, those two mask colors tend to be very opaque. But if you used red, green, blue, yellow, they tend to be somewhat transparent. And so on top of bare FR4, the color is darker than when it is on top of copper. So if you could actually get two different shades of red. So if you wanted to make something look like it was shading a little bit, you could do that by having copper under part of it and not copper under another. So copper pours can be used for aesthetic purposes. For the purposes of what we're doing, it's just to have a ground plane.
So you're selecting ground, right, Bob?
Yes. And just for kicks, let's do a hatch pattern.
What is a hatch pattern?
So if you look in the Discord channel for this class, I posted a couple of examples of recent boards that other people have made where instead of doing a solid copper pour, they did a hatched copper pour.
Okay.
And
Okay, so I selected it, and now I have to draw my shape, which is just going to stay outside the lines. That's all I have to do, right?
just anywhere outside the line, as long as you're outside of your outermost edge cut, then you're fine.
Mine doesn't connect. It just hold on.
If you double click, it'll connect. Double click
click.
on your last part.
Yeah,
Got it.
it'll just snap to the end on its own.
Got it. And then you can then fill all zones.
Yeah, B.
Then just B will do your fill.
Ooh, look at the hatch pattern.
Yep. So if Bob were to now go to the 3D viewer and zoom in, you'd actually see a hatch pattern.
We'll see how long
his
this takes
mask.
to render. Oh, look at that. There it is.
Yep. So now if he zooms way in, you can actually see instead of being a solid, it has gone and actually created this sort of hatch pattern.
So
and you can do fun things like rotate the hatch pattern to the 45s and stuff. And it looks kind of cool on a board. It's textured and it's,
I'm not getting, I'm not able to fill all zones. When I click fill all zones, it doesn't work now. I wonder if my,
is your, you could always Control Z and erase your fill zone, right? And go through the whole process again, making sure you got it all right. Like I'll do that now.
Okay.
So I have no fill zone now. So I chose a copper layer. I hit add a fill zone.
Hold on a minute. Let me just go back to edge cut to make sure
Yeah.
So edge cut. Is that the edge cut? Okay, so we'll go back to copper zone. Okay. And then we click on that. And we'll click front and back ground. We'll do a solid. Okay, now it worked. Weird. I think I had an extra box in there somehow and it kind of screwed.
That'll do it.
Okay.
So how small can I make the hatch width and the hatch gap?
You can make it pretty small. Somebody did they were equal. So like they did like, 2 millimeter, 2 millimeter, and they look kind of cool. That was the purple one.
Can I go as low as a 0.5 millimeter?
You can go as low as a trace. So yeah, you can go 2 and
Okay.
2 or 0.2 and 2. You said 2 and 2 or 0.2 and 2?
0.5.
Yeah, you can do 0.5.
Remove islands. Nah, whatever. I'll leave that at default. I don't get too crazy. I just want to see what this looks like. So I got to draw my shaping. Oops.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to stay outside the edge cut. So what Bob did there was he clicked the top left, the top right, the bottom left, and then he double clicked at bottom right, and that immediately closed the whole shape. And now if he zooms way in, you can see you get this grid pattern. And this time it's on the 45. Looks pretty sexy.
I want to see what that looks like in the 3D viewer.
Yeah.
Rendering.
Tilt the angle a little bit and you'll get a little better view of it.
It's still rendering.
Yeah.
Something else I thought of after class last week is I don't think we put in a smoothing capacitor for the LEDs. Do we need one?
It's not a smoothing capacitor. It's a decoupling capacitor, and
okay.
yeah, it's advanced. Oh, by the way, there is a mistake on your board, Bob.
Okay.
You cut a hole in your PCB, but you didn't actually move your LCD to the back. Now, technically, you don't have to because you're going to be soldering it on, but you'll notice you have silk art now on the board.
That was intentional.
Which you probably don't want, but okay.
How did
you
put
mean
the silk?
this silk art, the square?
Yeah.
The rectangle.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I could just make that invisible, couldn't I?
Yes, you can just make that invisible. And that's a really common thing when you're creating a PCB that's going to be visible to end users, is you might want to hide things like
R1, R2, R3.
Yeah, part identifiers, like the diodes have a 1 next to them all.
Yeah.
And
How did you put that art on there? I'm curious to learn that.
the Christmas present.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that next.
That was a convoluted process, but I think
Okay.
I think it's simpler now that we've been through it.
Yeah.
It was painful.
So
The most painful part was finding the right art to do it with.
Well, actually, the most difficult thing was finding the folder to put it in.
There was that. I think this is dead. It still has not rendered my hatch.
No. There. No, that doesn't look good.
Let's wait for it. I'll give it a couple more minutes.
Yeah. That's how's your board looking? You're able to do the fill?
Yep, got the fill in. So
one of the things you'll find when doing, once you've got a copper fill, which you'll probably do sort of midway through your board so you can figure out where your grounds need to be, it's handy to remember the shortcuts for that. So the letter B will do a fill and Control B will remove the fill. So you might want to do a fill and then go, oh, I'm missing a trace. Control B, remove it, add the trace you need. B again to do your fill. So it makes it easy to toggle your fill on and off. And as I pointed out last week, don't try to memorize all the possible shortcuts. If you hover your mouse over any function, so any of the icons or anything like that, it'll show you the shortcut key, and you'll just end up using the shortcut keys that are convenient for you, and you'll remember more and more over time, but you don't have to try to memorize them all at once.
All right. I'm back. Where did we leave me? Okay, so now I have no fill, right?
Yeah, you got to put your fill back on. Okay. I'm gonna zoom out so I can see your whole screen.
copper fill. Boom, boom. Hatch, motherfucker. I'll leave the
Sure
space
about
in.
that?
Yay.
That's
Look at
neat.
that.
That's really neat.
There you go.
Yeah.
Pretty hatches.
You don't have to use Hatch. I haven't used Hatch yet on any of mine, though. Now that I've seen it, I might consider doing it somewhere just because I think it looks cool.
I saved, so I'm going to see if the viewer will render it this time.
Or not.
Mm.
Oh, there it is.
Did. Yay.
Yeah, so zoom in, and I think if you kind of tilt the board a little bit, there you go.
So how'd you get that hole for the 1306, Bob? Is that same thing you did the edge
Just
cut?
a rectangle in the edge cuts, yeah.
Okay. So in the edge cut layer, you just did a neck. Okay, that's simple.
Just add another rectangle within the rectangle, and it's smart enough to know that an interior shape is a hole within an exterior shape.
Nice.
So here's a dumb question. It's smart enough, but if I had put components on that and still put an edge, what would have happened? It would still
You wouldn't be able
discard
to
it?
you wouldn't be able to do traces.
What do you mean?
Well, if you put a component in the middle of that and then try to wire a trace to it, you're gonna have a problem, right?
I
So
mean,
your design rules checker is gonna fail because it won't have a trace to that object.
Okay, so it'll still disappear it because it's a whole it's an edge cut within a board.
So
Yeah, I mean you could place a resistor in the middle of that hole, but you won't be able to put a trace to it.
Okay,
question. So I'm on my edge cut. If I select the box icon, I want to draw a little box in my edge cut. So
Yep.
on the edge cut layer,
yep.
and I draw a box.
Are you drawing a box or are you using the rectangle shape tool?
The rectangle shape tool. So that's
You
the,
could do it. You could draw 4 consecutive lines as long as they're all interlinked, and it will do the same thing.
So there's draw a line and
Yep.
draw a rectangle.
Yep. And you could draw the lines. Like if you wanted to do a triangle or you wanted to do
Right.
a square with clipped corners and stuff, you can do it as a series of lines.
But I could do it.
But if all you really want is a rectangle, it's just faster to draw a rectangle.
Okay, so I'm on the edge cut layer and I drew a rectangle. I
Right.
did. Now, how does it now draw a hole or punch a hole through it?
So it will, but the question is do you have a fill right now on your you have a copper fill running?
I did control B to remove the copper fill.
And now do a B again, and you should have a hole in the middle of your copper fill.
Ah, okay. Yep. That's simple. Wow.
Yep. That's simple. There are a few things in KiCad that are almost intuitive.
Almost. Let's talk about arcs because we didn't talk about arcs.
Yeah.
So
or arcs.
click on draw. Basically, you learn this stuff by trying it, right? I clicked on draw an arc in the edge cuts layer, and I click somewhere, and that sets the radius for the arc and the starting point, right?
Yeah, and so if you want, so you can use control keys and shift keys to.
And if I'm right, it only draws clockwise, if I remember right.
I can't remember if it's clockwise or. This is why I always have to try this every few times because it only does it in one direction. I can't remember which it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you want to use this to round a corner, you just have to pay attention to your radius and to where your starting point is.
Yeah, but you can use some control key, shift key modifiers so that it'll snap to various, like it'll be a straight line or it'll be a 90 degree and that kind of thing.
And sometimes I will draw an arc outside of everything and just move it into place.
Yeah, I would actually do that. Like if you wanted to create an oval slot, then I would draw it almost completely outside of my board, get it the right size, the right shape, and then drag it in as a collected piece.
Does KiCad have the concept of grouping parts?
It does now. So one of the
Okay.
things you can do by the way. So, Bob has sat here and he's created approximately a 90 degree. He can now grab endpoints, and it'll do some interesting things. If he grabs an endpoint and drags the endpoint, see what it's doing there?
Yeah.
So it sort of makes an invisible pie wedge that matches the angle you're dragging it to.
Yep.
A lot of math going on behind the scenes here.
Yeah. Ugly math.
So what's the purpose of this? To round an edge or what?
It's whatever you want it to be, whatever you need that arc for.
You could use it for having rounded corners on your square. Or if Bob were to drag the bottom point on that arc.
Oh, I got to select it.
Yeah, select the arc again. Drag the bottom corner. No, the bottom left corner, sorry. There you go. He can now make it a half circle.
Okay.
Right? And now, if he creates a half circle, he can now make a copy of that half circle. So click that. Now he can make a duplicate of it and flip that or rotate it, right? And now separate them a bit. There we go.
Okay.
Now select both of them at the same time, right click,
shoot,
and do align top.
How do you select both of them at the same time?
Shift.
Okay, so they're selected.
No, they're not. Neither of them selected right now.
Well, I did. I hit shift. Maybe shift is not good on this one. Maybe alt? Nope, not alt.
Just use a box. Just use a selecting box. So start outside
Okay.
on the upper. Yeah, just grab the whole thing. There you go. Oops. Why didn't it select?
Maybe it is selected. It's just not showing it.
Oh, maybe it is.
Yeah,
it is. Okay, cool. So now right click and do align top. Right. Now you're guaranteed those tops are. So now you can draw a line, just a straight line. And if he zooms way in on the one on the left until he gets that little circle dot right there, click.
Why is it not placing the circle dot on the thing?
Change your grid. So
stupid grid.
Yes.
Where do I change my grid?
Yeah.
Preferences.
No, it's right there. At the top of your screen, it'll show you your current grid. So right now, your current grid is 0.254 millimeters or point. It should be able to touch that with no problem. That's a really fine grid.
Well, that's what it wants to count as a circle. I could do that and then just drag it into place. That'll be fine.
I can zoom out so I can see what
you're
you're doing. And if you hold the shift key, I think it will draw a straight line. Or is it the control key? I can't remember which modifier it is. One will keep it nice and straight. There you go. You got the little dot at the end.
Okay, so could we do the art next? I'm curious about
Yep.
that.
And then if he goes back to the front, he can drag that into position. It should now snap, Bob.
Drag is
G or D, depending on whether you're trying to do a straight drag. There you go.
Still didn't make a circle, but we'll move on.
Yeah.
All right. So what did you want to know about art?
I want to know how to put a piece of art on there.
Okay.
So
what layer and what's the process?
Well, the layer is silkscreen, usually. Sometimes it's masked, depends on what you want to do with it.
But yeah, for this it was silkscreen.
It would be front silkscreen or back front?
Do you want it on the front or on the back?
This is the front.
Front.
Yeah. So don't worry about that right now. The first thing we have to do is create the art itself. And so if Bob were to select that.
Can you upload an image?
Not directly.
Close. So if Bob were to select that and right click, what you'll actually see is it's a footprint that he's got there. So he's created the art as a footprint.
And now I'm opening it in the footprint editor just so you can see it.
Just so you
as
can
a
see it,
footprint.
yeah.
course, that's a really fast process on this computer.
What is up with your computer?
Apparently, I need a new one.
Can't be that. I mean, my machines are older than yours. I mean, the laptop that I took to DEF CON for the demo was 2000.
I don't know. I got DefCoin running on this. Maybe that's chewing it
Oh,
up.
no, yeah. Yeah. I think it was a 2013. So it was only a 9-year-old laptop.
Should be coming. Okay. There we go. So that's the clip art that we imported into here.
And the way we did it is if Bob goes back to the launch page for KiCad, the one that shows the schematic and the PCB and that one right there, there's an option for image converter. So this tool will let you take a JPEG, which is the easiest thing to do, but also a PNG, import it, and then scale it to whatever size you want and create a footprint from it.
Okay, let's see. Okay, this is just a simple JPEG, right?
Yep. And so one of the things you can do is you can, like in this case, we got one that's got a couple of colors in it. And you've got options for converting it to black and white. So up at the top. But do you have a JPEG already, Kevin?
No, this is fine. This is perfect.
Okay, fine. Yeah,
what important thing to do is set the size you want before you save it, because you can't save it after it's a footprint. You can't change the size.
You can't scale a footprint. So, but if you want to see what this looks like, Bob can go up to the top and it says the original picture, the gray picture, and a black and white.
Oh, okay.
I really want to see what black and white looks like.
Yeah.
Black and white is what it's going to look like on your board. And you can adjust the threshold if you need to.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And you choose what layer you want it on, which in our case, it's front still screen. If it's the opposite of how you want it on your board, you might want to go negative.
Oh, okay.
So this looks pretty cool.
Wow, this is a simple process.
Yeah.
Wow.
Simple once you've done it, or once someone tells you how to do it.
Well, the way you're explaining it is simple.
All right. That's my goal.
Yeah. And this is another case where if you've spent the time to learn Inkscape, you can do all sorts of complex art
Oh, yeah, sure.
in Inkscape and then push it onto the various layers.
Inkscape is fucking amazing.
Yeah. So if you were to look at like my E-Challenge coin, which has the artwork in the middle and all the artwork around the outer edges, and it's got curved text and it's got inverted text and it's got, all that stuff. That's all done in Inkscape. And then it's pushed to the various layers and then output, including the edge cut layer. Another good example of that was my Marvin pin.
Right? Oh, yeah.
That was all done in Inkscape. So the board edge cut was drawn out in Inkscape. And when I ran the little plugin, it separates it out into the various layers. And so the edge cut became that irregular shape of Marvin. And then the black and the white for the mask and the silk was all done.
Cool.
And the text on the back was done. I mean, all that was done in Inkscape, and I could sit there and look at it and get it the way I want, change
really
fonts.
Neat. Yeah, it's really neat.
So once you have it roughly looking like what you want it to look like, and you got your size set where you want it, then you export it to file. And this is where it gets tricky.
Okay.
You have to know where to put it. And where did we put it? It was under KiCad, Share, KiCad, Library?
Right?
Pretty. Do you have Pretty there somewhere?
I don't have Pretty.
KiCad 6.0 shared. What was under Library? What was the next thing?
Oh, that's right. It's under 6. Okay, there we go.
6 shared.
KiCad footprint.
Yeah.
Oh, so it needs to be there. Okay.
If you put it in a folder that's already in your footprints folder, then you'll be able to find it when you need to bring it into your PCB.
My suggestion, and I don't know why it is on Bob's machine, but when I installed KiCad, it created in my user folder, my user data folder on Windows, and I'm not sure what it is on the Mac. It created a KiCad 6, and in there it had an empty slot for footprints, an empty slot for symbols, an empty slot for scripts, all sorts of fun stuff. And so that's where I put all mine.
So I saved it in a folder called custom.
Yeah.
And now I can close this and come back into here. Do you want to go through that process again of linking it to a schematic again? That was kind of fun.
Yeah. So if you were to put something, so let's just, as an example, if we were to just immediately from the PCB add that new custom footprint to the board, it would show up, and that would be great.
Oh,
But then if you refreshed your board using something from your schematic, you might lose it. So my recommendation is I always create a placeholder on my schematic for any artwork.
now you're on the edge cut layer, Bob. Does that matter?
I'm not really on a layer. I'm manipulating this piece. But yeah.
Yeah,
I
the
get what you're
footprint.
saying.
Yeah, within the footprint file, it specifies all different things, because a footprint could have some parts of it on the silk layer, some parts on the mask layer, some parts on the copper layer. It just happens that this one is only on the silk layer.
Got it.
Another thing, when you make a custom footprint, it's going to give you a reference designator.
Mhm.
And when you go to edit that footprint, E, you can unclick show, and that will disappear from your board.
Got it.
All right, so continue.
Yeah. So Bob, if you were to do what is it, update from schematic?
Yeah, whatever.
What's that error message?
Something can't be found.
Yeah.
All right, so I do have delete footprints with no symbol checked. So
Yeah. So what'll end up happening is it'll delete the one he's had there, and it will put the original one back.
Got it.
So if you click OK, I think that's exactly what it's going to do on you.
Yep, that's what it did. And it's hard to tell that's what it did because
You happen to magically put it in exactly the same place.
magically or preference, yeah.
You're a magician here. So you actually just go ahead and delete it, and then do a refresh from your schematic, and we'll see it come back again, and we'll show you why that occurs in just a second.
Hey, it didn't come back.
Why didn't it come back? I gotta see what we have here.
You might have deleted it and saved it. I'm not sure.
That's right. Do you have relink? I don't know if you have to need relink or not. I can remember. I have to go look at mine sometime, but that's all right. Okay.
Huh.
Maybe we don't have. Oh, did we remove it from your schematic too?
I think he did.
Maybe my schematic wasn't saved, or let's take a look.
Well, yeah,
that's right. I did remove it from the schematic.
Yeah. So what I recommend you do is you put a placeholder on your schematic for any of these custom graphic footprints you want to have.
Oh.
Now, remember, a graphic footprint has no electrical characteristic. So the symbol you want to put on your schematic also needs to have no electronic component to it. And so a mounting hole is the perfect example. So a mounting hole is a symbol that has no electrical characteristic. And you can assign any footprint you want to a mounting hole. So in this case, we're going to assign the footprint of our present.
Okay.
All right. How do I right click?
Or just if you highlight it and hit F.
F.
That's
What
be
does F do?
highlighted. There you go.
Okay. So F is edit footprint field.
Yeah.
And
Click that
we're
little set of books there.
changing the footprint to be the new one that I just added in custom called present.
That's easy.
Click O. Yeah. And so now we've got this. And so now anytime you mess with your printed circuit board, it will always make sure that the footprint for the present is on your board.
Yep.
I don't know what dialog box that is. Okay.
I don't either.
So now if we do an update from schematic,
Oh, neat. Yeah.
and click OK.
Yeah, there it is. It's behind you.
Yep. As soon as he clicks, there it goes, and he can drag
Nice.
it into place.
Oh, very
and
cool.
There it is.
Yeah. Nice. So next week we will finish up the ordering and then send it off to jail. Pretend to send it off to JLPC.
I hope so. I am not making any promises for next week because Friday morning I'm having my ear surgery.
Oh God.
So we'll see what happens.
You're having
Yeah.
them. You're having your ears docked.
I'm having tubes put in my ears again.
Oh man. Bob.
Ooh.
So I should be fine, but I don't know what it's going to be like to wear headphones after that.
Yeah.
So soon after.
Is this ear infection problem?
No, it's a hearing problem more than anything. I have bad drainage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Because often kids end up with tubes because they end up with ear infections because they don't have good drainage
I've had
initially.
tubes several times. It's,
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, these are
never
supposed
had-
to be the tubes that are like that'll last a number of years. That the technology is advanced, so they tell
There you
me.
go.
So the surgeon tells me.
Yeah,
Apparently,
no,
there's a sucker born every minute.
yeah,
Well,
well,
if
I've
not, well,
managed
there's
to
always the
avoid
next
most
week.
of those things, so I'm gonna try to keep it that way. Bets, any new questions?
Nope. This helped me out a lot. I'm gonna hopefully this week play around and try to create my board, and, exactly to how I want it, and then hit up with any questions on our next meeting, and then
Yeah.
hopefully order
Doesn't have
something.
to. It doesn't have to be a rectangle. That's the thing you can remember. You could make a circle or an oval or an ellipse or
anything.
a triangle.
Yeah, let's all make challenge coin PCBs this year.
So Bob, no, actually, so here's an intro. So Bob, select that circle you have right there. No, don't select that one. Hit E. Hit E. What's the radius of that?
20.103.
Make it. What is it? Make it 21.
Okay.
Click OK. That is all the space you have.
Holy shit. That's insane. That is impossible.
Nope. That's it.
Screw that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's a new appreciation for that. Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, do me a favor.
Uh-huh.
Just temporarily, just for grins and giggles, temporarily, let's add a footprint. Battery, I think it is. No, not that one. No. Add a footprint. I think it's the battery. Yeah, battery. You got it right there. And let's see if we can find a keystone for a CR 2030. Any ones that have a 2032 on it that, no, it's got to be, it can't be a vertical.
Right there. Keystone.
The 3002. Yeah, there's a good one. Just use that one for a moment.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So you've just lost that much screen or that much PCB real estate.
But only on one side.
Yeah, but artwork is on the other side. Nothing is on
Yeah.
the other side of my boards. Everything has to be crammed on one side of the board.
Oh my God. Dude. How are you not driven mad by that?
Well, yeah, well,
Kevin, have you met this guy?
Yeah, right.
There's a reason why my hair is really kind of thin.
There's a reason he's hanging around with us.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's
No,
amazing.
it's funny because I was in a Discord channel and I was trying to explain just how little real estate I have to work with.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a lot in there.
It's wild. All right, so maybe next week if your ears are not bleeding.
Yeah, I probably won't know until Friday lunchtime.
All right. If not, we'll do the following week. But yeah.
Well, the other thing is if he just wants to start the meeting, I'm happy to.
Oh,
do
I
the
can
whole
sit
thing.
here mute and just let you drive, and I'll just move the mouse as you tell me to.
There
Yes,
we
we
go.
can absolutely do that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome.
I mean, I could even sit down at my computer and Bob can share my screen, but
How can I share your screen? You can share your screen.
Well, no, yeah, you can specify that I can share a screen during the meeting. That's all.
Yes.
I'm just gonna get it.
Yes, that's doable.
That's doable too.